Okay. Hey everybody, it's Get the Nutritionist here, and today's video is going to be on how to grow more hair, right? So if you're a person that has hair loss, you're noticing you're balding, your hair is getting thinner, and I'm noticing this is happening more with people who are of a younger age, and that's terrible because I'm talking about people in their 20s, 30s, early 40s, and while I've seen people into their 60s, 70s, 80s with a full set of hair and they look good, and ask them what they do, and lo and behold, right, they eat a lot of protein. So I think due to a lot of the plant-based propaganda, due to vegan vegetarianism, due to the origins of the dietetic organization that's been pushed by, Seventh-day Adventists, people need to realize that you're under heavy propaganda to not consume meat. And the reality is meat's really good for you. It's the most nutrient-dense food. That is also the least toxic food on this planet. This is why a lot of people, when they do a carnivore diet or elimination diet, meat's always at the center of it. Specifically, beef, bison, lamb, because it's the most nutrient dense. So I'm kind of here to quell and quench people's adverse reaction to meat, because first of all, it's not going to give you a heart attack, right? Yes, it's saturated fat, but it's not like the excess amount of sugar that damages your cardiolipin. Same with seed oils. Then rupture your intima. Then you got macrophages coming in, and then boom, you have health issues, right, with these foam cells causing clots. So yeah, I'm just going to go through, the various nutrients people may need. I think a big one for some people may be folate, vitamin B9, due to the methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase enzyme gene mutation some people may have, in which they're unable to properly convert folic acid into dehydrofolate to the 5-methylfolate to, then have actual functional folate, right? So yeah, I'll stop talking and just, continue, right? Because the thing is, I could go on forever, right? But, you know, everyone has here a limited time, and let me begin. So hair is important because people, you like to have hairstyles, style your hair, nice thick hair, you do what you want, right? A pompadour, women, you want to look like that, old school Marilyn Monroe with the, I don't know, ancient retro look, or, the beehive, I don't know, I'm not a chick, but I think it's kind of neat. So for some men and women, losing hair at a younger age, right? I mean, it doesn't make you feel younger, right? A full set of hair is a sign of youth and a sign of virility and fertility. And the thing is, when people start losing their hair and starts being thin, men feel a lot less like men. Although some people look amazing bald, right? But regardless, right? People go bald because they have no choice. Not many people go bald on purpose. They just kind of, go with the flow, right? And they start wearing caps, or they go bald and they just turn to the rock, right? And women are different. Women have always had long, beautiful, illustrious hair, and it's important for women to feel beautiful and to really engage with their femininity by growing out their hair. The longer the better, in my opinion, right? But if you're having issues with your hair, right, it's going to affect your self-esteem, and I want people to feel proud of themselves. And like I say, right, you got to get healthy. You got to do the right things to give your body the nutrients it requires so you can have a nice, beautiful, full set of hair, right? Because what I want to say is, before your body even considers hair, it cares a lot more about what's going inside, right? Your organs, your immune cells, your skin, all that stuff, right? Detoxing. A lot of these things in the body need to happen first, right? Your brain function, neurologically, right? Speaking. Your mental health, right? Your body would prefer to use those amino acids for neurotransmitters instead of hair, Just, it's a preference, right? Because when you have limited nutrients and you're deficient, your body is going to focus on survival stuff, right? Hair isn't really that needed, right? Because if you have excess amount of nutrients, then your body will be like, fuck it, right? You got all these extra nutrients, let's give you more hair, better nails, nice skin, and so on, right? So that's kind of the point I want to make, right? You need to be in a little bit of an excess surplus to actually have your body be comfortable with growing more hair. I've seen people do excessive fasting, and some people begin to lose hair. Again, people go vegan vegetarian, they miss many critical nutrients, zinc, iron, B12, and then there's a cascade that happens, they lack amino acids, right? Not as much as they're supposed to get, and boom, boom. They start losing hair, and in some cases, clumps of hair, and it's, it sucks, right? Because people were told it was the healthiest thing to do, and they come out of it disgruntled because it was bullshit, right? It's just reality, right? So let me continue. So I want to talk about how eating a diet low in quality animal protein, people that are lacking certain vitamins and minerals, and people that undereat, right? Those are big issues we need to solve. And first of all, right, there isn't a magical hair supplement out there. I mean, there's many, and some of them are okay, some of them are decent, but just like any multivitamin, there's always things in there I don't agree with that I believe to be detrimental in the long term, right? So I'm just talking about pinpointing things specifically. So in your case, you may figure out what works best for you, or experiment with things that are gonna help you, right? Because I mean, everyone's different, right? I don't know your nutrient deficiencies. For some people, it could be B12. For some people, it could be iron. For some people, it could be zinc. For some people, it could be vitamin D, right? But I consider it to be sunlight. So yeah. So hair stops growing, becomes thin because again, your body wants to prioritize your muscles, your immune system, your liver, your heart, your brain. These are all vital for your human function. So eventually, when you have the slowing down, right, because you have a lack of nutrients, if you don't have enough amino acids from proteins, minerals like zinc and iron, you don't get enough food, then there's no extra nutrients for your hair to grow. As I explained, hair is mostly going to be protein. Around 80 to 95% of the hair sheath is consisted of keratin. This is the structural protein that gives hair, the hair. So you need to have adequate dietary protein. It's broken down into essential amino acids that your body needs before you can even begin building hair. Now, for some people, they think 30 grams of protein a day is enough. I disagree. That's the bare minimum needed for muscle synthesis. And as I explained in many previous articles, if you're a fan of mine, you need more than that, right? You need more protein for your mental health, right? To make neurotransmitters. You need more protein to help you with enzymes, for your immune system, right? So if you're getting just 30 grams of protein and you're supplementing it or something, right? Or you're eating just a little bit of piece of meat, eventually that's not going to be enough, and you will notice regressions into your health. So I tell people, like at least get 80 to 100 grams of protein minimum daily, right? So like I say, right, eat some meat, red beef, that's the best, right? Because the thing is, if you go plant-based, right, and you try and get all your amino acids, you need to eat like a gorilla just to get a decent amount of that. Or a small amount of piece of meat is going to give you cysteine, glycine, proline, lysine, arginine, histidine, and leucine. If you know me, I say all protein is not the same. Quality of protein can vary from a pea protein, from a whey protein, to a soy isolate protein, to a natural piece of beef or a collagen protein. They're all vastly different in how much they come with, right? Let's be honest, in nature, there's no pea protein, right? If the supply lines shut down tomorrow because there was a war, or, God forbid, a big ship got stuck in the canal in a black world trade, and you're not getting your pea protein, you're fucked, right? Same thing with whey protein, you're fucked. Soy protein, right? Because you're plant-based, you're fucked. Even if you want, this animal-based, grass-fed whey protein, right? You're fucked. Just eat beef. Why do people need to do marketing to sell you all these expensive, powdered protein supplements that they mark up at high prices and then act like they're heroes or geniuses? I'll make an exception for collagen due to the high amount of glycine, which is going to be continually useful, right? But like I say, just eat more beef. It's as simple as that, right? Unless you have some kind of problem where you can't chew or eat food, then I can understand that. But for the majority of people, right, just eat beef, just eat bison, just eat lamb, right? Focus on that as your staple, right? Because that's how you get the most amount of amino acids that your body requires. Because again, this is more than muscle. It's more than enzymes. It's more than neurotransmitters. It's having a surplus in these important areas of your health for your body to say, fuck it, I'm gonna grow a big beard, right? Because I can, right? I have excess. I'm gonna grow more hair, right? I used to have long hair down to my butt, right? But I cut it because, I just hate having long hair as a guy. It's hard to maintain. But point being, right, if that's what you want long hair, go for it, right? I'm teaching you how to do it. And if you have a more severe issue, autoimmune, then make an appointment and we could figure this out, right? But the core thesis of this video is the average person just has a nutrient deficiency, we're going to figure it out, fix it, and boom, within a few months, you'll be beautiful, like Fabio or whatever. So again, right, cysteine, the most important amino acid in keratin, which provides sulfur bonds that give you hair strength. Low cysteine may cause brittle hair, slow growth, and breakage. Now, if you notice my article on nickel, nickel is going to attach onto cysteine, and it's going to turn against your body as a hapten and cause an autoimmune-like reaction. If you've been sick with mold toxicity, it's going to use up all that cysteine. If you have a bunch of exposure, right, to cigarette smoking or exhaust fumes, if you're in the military or you're around, things that are going to be toxic and that they produce inflammatory reactive oxygen species, your body's going to use up a lot of cysteine to make glutathione. Glutathione is the master antioxidant. It's a peptide that needs glycine, cysteine, and glutamine. So if you're having a weak immune system and you're always kind of sick, you're probably using up more or producing more glutathione. So there's just not enough of that cysteine you would need for your hair, which in some cases people would do better with a N-acetylcysteine, right, to supplement that. Glycine, it's a major component of collagen, hair, skin, nails, supports connective tissue like skin and joints, helps hair follicle structure. From client experience, people have been able to grow their hair out more and thicker by using collagen powder, a gelatin powder, which is cheaper, right? Bone broths, and eating tougher cuts of meat that contain ligaments and tendons, which are rich in glycine. So like your Lennon broils, right? Or your big ass chuck roasts that are like 2, 3, $5 a pound, depending on inflation. You put in a soup, you stew it, because I like more meat than water, and you're good, man. You break down those tough collagen and the fascia, and it's good collagen if you want to be cheap like me. But if you got a little more money to spend and you have that kind of luxury, then you could afford a collagen powder. Or if you're in between, you could get a gelatin powder, right, and just put it on your food, and yeah, it's a good way to supplement the glycine. Because to me, the rate limited and what you may need more of, if you eat plenty of meat, it's going to be the glycine, right? If you don't eat plenty of meat, then you're getting introduced to eating more meat, eventually you'll be fine over time, right? You need proline, lysine, arginine, histidine, leucine. These are all other amino acids. They'll help with the formation of your hair follicles and to do the synthesis of, amino acids, your proteins, and other things, right? Because everything has more than one use, right? Which is why I brought up the whole cysteine thing, right? How that gets overused, right? Glycine, right? Same thing, right? If you need to use a lot of glutathione for your body because you're exposed to a lot of, lipid peroxidation, you're exposed to superoxide dismutase, and you got to break it down to hydrogen peroxide, and your body has to, curb down all of these antioxidants, right? It's using these antioxidants, the one prong electrons and the two prong electrons, that's why I call them, to take care of these hydrogen peroxides and whatever these free radicals and non-radicals produce, right? So your body can neutralize it. I'll probably have to link to a different article explaining all that if you're not used to my stuff. So hair follicles are among the fastest dividing tissues in the body, and it relies on adequate protein synthesis. Which is why I say not all protein is the same. Low protein diets or plant-based diets are something I do not ever recommend for people interested in growing more hair. Many clients do come to me from those diets in which they neglect red meat. Beef is high in bioavailable, usable, complete protein, all essential amino acids, right? What this means is you got to get it from your diet. And the other amino acids, which is still considered to be essential in my opinion, can be made from those. But, more is better in my opinion when it comes to that specific thing. When compared to even the best protein powders, we cannot forget about minerals like zinc, selenium, iron, and B vitamins. So although I just gave a few, right, for the amino acid makeup of keratin, you need, the cysteine, aspartic acid, arginine, serine, glutamine, proline, tyrosine, glycine, alanine, cysteine, valine, histidine, threonine, methionine, isoleucine, leucine, lysine, phenylalanine, and of course the 1 stars are the essential amino acids, which from the others can be made from that, but then you're just losing more of that reserve to make the essentials. By eating, beef, right, a complete protein with all your essential amino acids and the other ones, you'll do well, right? You'll have more than enough. So let's talk about vitamins, and I'm not getting too deep into it because that would be a very big article I do not want to write for some time because I'm just kind of chilling and I'm a little busy. But vitamins, right? Vitamin D, I'm going to call it vitamin sun because a vitamin D3 pill cannot give you the power of the sun. It doesn't have the whole spectrum, right? We don't have that technology yet to encapsulate sunlight into a pill, right? So here's the thing, right? Vitamin D helps activate dormant hair follicles. Hair follicles contain abundant vitamin D receptors. Unlike many nutrients, vitamin D isn't primarily used as a building block, but instead acts as a hormone controlling gene expression. Some people are inside the entire day. Then they go outside and they're wearing a hat. And people just aren't exposed to the sun as much as they should be. And they say sun gives you cancer, but I blame it on the seed oils because it's making your skin cells very unstable because it's on a double bond like saturated fats. And you're prone to easy oxidation, which then becomes lipid peroxidation, and so on. You get this inflammation, and you go to the beach and you turn into a lobster, right? But then you get the people that they cut out all seed oils, they eat only saturated fats, and monosaturated fats, right? Like virgin olive oil, and they don't burn at all, and they get a nice, beautiful tan, and they look pretty hot, right? So the reality is, yeah, no, you don't need sunscreen. The caveman didn't get fucking cancer, right? There's no proof of that. I'm still waiting for someone to ever allege that, but that's never going to happen, right? Because if we are humans, right, and we evolved on this earth, right, wouldn't it be like pretty fucking retarded to not have any defense mechanisms against the sun, right? If we came from a fish frog into a human, or whether God made us, or whatever your belief is, right? Why didn't something logical, make you want more sunlight? And it does, right? When you get too much sunlight, you have something called lumisterol and tachysterol, and your body can actually store that for the winter. But again, right, vitamin D pills don't do that, and people don't even look into research for lumisterol and tachysterol, right? So that's important. That's why when it gets a little dark and sad and gloomy in the winter, right, people get seasonal affective disorder, right? Because you need vitamin D from the sun. And I'm sure the more people explain, red light and green light and blue light and all the other wavelengths in between that we can't even see with our eyes, right? I'm sure we're getting so many benefits out of this, but we just don't know how to measure that, or we just attribute it to this one vitamin D thing. So get sunlight. That's my point, right? I'm sorry if I went on a tangent on this, but it's important to understand this. Vitamin D also suppresses excessive inflammatory cytokines surrounding follicles, which may be relevant in autoimmune hair disorders like certain alopecias in which people have the balding. However, I do not recommend taking vitamin D because, again, right, vitamin D lacks the power of red light, green light, blue light, and other wavelengths that come from the sun. This is why people who use red light therapy are noticing improvements in their skin and hair. There's people that have that red light helmet or something, and they use it, and they're noticing new hair growth they never had before. They notice that their hair is growing thicker and longer. And that's just red light. That's not even vitamin D doing that work, you know what I mean? But, it all... I haven't yet put a way to describe it. I'm sure there's people that are doing that work already, about how it's a whole complex of light your body needs to really have vitamin D activate. So for that reason, people go outside for at least 15 to 30 minutes a day, get as much sunlight as you can. Over time, this will stimulate the production of hair when paired with all of the other recommendations I give in this guide. A vitamin D pill does not replace the sunlight. This is the phases of the hair. But, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, what things you may be missing to, encourage hair growth. Vitamin C builds the collagen scaffold supporting hair follicles. Hair follicles are anchored within a collagen-rich extracellular matrix. So it's kind of cool, like your body, like, you ever see a building and there's like the scaffolding on the side? So your body basically does that, to an extent, right? Which is kind of cool. So vitamin C is required for enzymes prolyl hydroxylase and lysyl hydroxylase. These enzymes stabilize collagen by hydroxylating proline and lysine amino acids, aka proteins, allowing protein, aka collagen fibers, to form their characteristic triple helix structure. Without vitamin C, collagen weakens, connective tissue becomes fragile, follicles lose structural support, vitamin C regenerates vitamin E after oxidation, helping maintain antioxidant protection within the follicles, aka glutathione, which requires protein amino acids like cysteine, glycine, glutamine. And of course, in every study I've seen, if you take collagen supplement with a vitamin C, vice versa, right, you will always have way more production of collagen synthesis, and people always have better results with their hair and their skin and their nails. So take that what do you will, right? Collagen and vitamin C, or aka protein and vitamin C with the glycine. That's going to help you with that specific problem if you're low in that. So what shall we add, right? If you have vitamin A toxicity, you eat a lot of vitamin A foods for some reason, you took Accutane. For that reason, vitamin A actually increases demand and need for vitamin C. So vitamin C deficiency isn't because of scurvy. Too much vitamin A, which induces a vitamin C deficiency, causes a scurvy, right? That's why you don't see many carnivores with scurvy unless they eat a lot of organ meats like liver and kidneys, which are high in vitamin A and will displace vitamin C from the body and or overuse vitamin C. So yeah, vitamin C is helpful in this regard. So another major role is that vitamin C helps improve iron absorption by reducing ferric iron, Fe3, into the absorbable ferrous form, Fe2. Since iron is critical for DNA synthesis and rapidly dividing follicle cells, vitamin C indirectly supports hair growth by improving iron availability. As I always say, get your iron from eating meat that is cooked somewhere in the medium range to get heme iron. Cooking meat too much will remove that. It'll remove much more of the heme iron, right? So when you have meat that's like medium rare or medium, right, and it's little, aka bloody, right? It's not bloody. It's called heme iron. It's the hemoglobin, right? It's not actual blood. Because if you drink animal and you drink the blood and then you tasted that, it would taste very different and not very appetizing, right? That's why usually they drain the blood, right? And that's what's left, and that's what's going to give you your bioavailable, usable form of iron, which will not give you a tummy ache like, you know, the whole actual metal shavings people are prescribed, or they go to the shitty GNC or any supplement store, right? It's always a crappy, it's not like an iron bisglycinate, right? Something usable. So in this regard, this was, I believe, given zinc chloride topically or something. And just by that one thing, right, these people, women, were able to grow out, more hair, right, more coverage. And again, that's just one factor. For some people, zinc can make all the difference. For some people, it could be vitamin C. For some people, it could be folate, B9, the methylfolate form. For some people, it could be B12, right? Like, it just depends, right? I don't know where you've been from, what your diet is, what you supplement for. This is just a bunch of things where all put together, if you have a good diet and such, you should have a nice, beautiful set of hair that grows, right? Minus any other serious problems. Vitamin E protects hair follicles from oxidative damage. Hair follicles generate enormous amounts of ATP through mitochondrial respiration. This eventually produces reactive oxygen species. Excessive damages to mitochondrial DNA, cell membrane, follicular stem cells, and keratinocytes. Vitamin E is the body's primary lipid-soluble antioxidant. It embeds itself within cell membranes and prevents lipid peroxidation before free radicals destroy phospholipids. Vitamin E also improves microcirculation by protecting endothelial cells and reducing oxidative injury within small blood vessels by supplying blood vessels, oxygen, right? That's why you need iron, that's why you need B12, that's why you need B9. You need oxygenated blood to reach all areas of your body to get the nutrients it needs to do the job. A big part of changing your diet is to remove seed oils. I say this because high amounts of these oxidized omega-6 will increase more inflammation. And something interesting is in people that are having alopecia, they're going balding, hair loss, they're finding that people have a higher amount of what's called malondialdehyde. And it's one of the toxic metabolic byproducts people get from consuming seed oils, amongst many things. So for that reason, I would recommend not eating seed oils, right? Removing vegetable oil, corn oil, safflower oil, sunflower, canola, grapeseed, rice oil, rice bran, margarine, because these fats are prone to oxidation because they have a single bond or polyunsaturated fatty acids. So, it'll cause lipid peroxidation, right? When you get sunlight and you get that burn, right? As I talked about. Instead, replace them with healthier, stable fats, such as saturated fats like tallow, butter, coconut oil, MCT oil, and monosaturated extra virgin olive oil. These are stable fats that do not cause lipid peroxidative damage because, again, right, we weren't meant to ever eat seed oils. This is a very recent invention. Again, there's always marketing because people got to sell crap that's, garbage, right? Hell, there's people selling wood pulp as cellulose and they're putting it in certain foods, and I'm like, people will do anything to sell anything, right? If people can sell you a big ball of shit from an asshole, they will. It's just the reality of the world we live in. Vitamin B1, thiamine, fuels cell energy production. And again, right, what makes hair follicles interesting, just like any other parts of your cell, is everything has to divide, right? You have the original copy, it gets old, so you gotta divide, mitosis, you grow more, and so on, right? So this rapid division occurs, so you gotta supply that with energy to occur. So thiamine functions as a TPP, thiamine pyrophosphate. It's a coenzyme for many enzymes in carbohydrate metabolism, like pyruvate dehydrogenase, alpha ketoglutarate dehydrogenase, branch chain alpha keto acid dehydrogenase, and transketolase in the pentose phosphate pathway. Essentially, it helps you with the electron transport chain, or the citric acid cycle, or the Krebs cycle, however you learn about it in school. Basically, it helps you part of the process to make energy, right? So your B vitamins, as I tell everybody, regardless of the foods you eat, it converts it to energy, right? Or it's the carbs, or the fats, or the bits of the proteins for the conversions. That's going to help you with making your energy and to have it become something, to make the mitochondria, the ATP, right? So without adequate thiamine, right, energy cannot efficiently enter the citric acid cycle, reducing ATP production. Follicular matrix cells, which divide rapidly, become energy deficient, slowing hair growth and impairing keratin production. Remember to eat enough food, as energy is indeed a currency used by the body. B vitamins help convert food you eat into energy. If it's B1, I recommend using thiamine hydrochloric acid, right, or HCl, 100 micrograms, as it is water soluble, so I don't worry about that ever accumulating because it'll pee it out. B3, niacin becomes NAD, NADP. These molecules are involved in more than 400 enzymatic reactions. They're essential for ATP generation, DNA repair like PARP, cell signaling, oxidative stress management, and mitochondrial metabolism. Hair follicles have one of the highest rates of DNA replication in the body. NAD-dependent enzymes support this continuous cycle of growth and repair. Niacin also promotes vasodilation, potentially improving nutrient delivery to the scalp, aka more blood flow to your scalp, right? B3, again, you get plenty of it from eating enough beef, because, again, right, people don't want to take nicotinic acid and they get the flush. Or people take too much NAD, and for some people, they just don't feel good because they're lacking all the other components they need for their body, right? The minerals and the vitamins to properly metabolize and use, that extra energy. And when it comes to detox, I mean, it could really turn on an unending hose of detox, side effects. So, I don't believe in pushing too much B3 because, again, right, your body is limited by how much you give it. And I do think for the most part, the NAD, NMN, and all that kind of stuff is kind of a fad. And again, it's all about money. But, some people take it and they feel good. So again, right, like I tell people, if you take something, you feel good, take it. If you take it and you don't feel nothing, then you're probably fine already. Vitamin B5, pantothenic acid, it's incorporated into coenzyme A, one of the most important coenzymes in metabolism. It is required for fatty acid oxidation and fatty acid synthesis, cholesterol synthesis, and acetylation reactions, and of course, energy production. Hair follicles depend on fatty acids, which is why saturated fats are good, for membrane integrity, signaling molecules and the production of scalp lipids, right? So we don't have, dry hair. Without sufficient coenzyme A, energy production and lipid metabolism become impaired, compromising rapidly dividing follicular cells. This is why I said it was important to remove seed oils and to replace them with the healthy fats. Vitamin B5 is found in almost every food. My only issue with people, right, is you'll be low in B5 with like extreme stress, multoxicity mycotoxins affecting your body, and mostly if you undereat or you do too much fasting. If you don't eat enough food, right, and then you won't really get enough B5, right? Because there isn't really like a rich source of B5. There's just a little bit of it in all the food, so I think it's interesting in that way. B6, pyridoxal 5-phosphate. B6 is important because it links amino acid metabolism directly to keratin synthesis. P5P acts as a coenzyme for transamination, decarboxylation, and transsulfuration. Essentially, it helps convert your proteins to amino acids to be usable and rearranges them. It enables conversion of methionine into cysteine through the transsulfuration pathway. Remember, the cysteine forms a disulfide bond that gives keratin its strength. Low B6 can indirectly weaken hair by limiting sulfur amino acid metabolism. B6 also participates in hemoglobin synthesis, neurotransmitter production, immune regulation, all of which influence follicle health. However, I rarely do see B6 deficiencies, and instead, I see a lot more B6 toxicity due to supplements putting in like a crazy amount of vitamin B6, and it causes a bottleneck of magnesium and B6 and B2, and then people have these issues with their, neurological issues, right? Essentially, what they're getting is what do you call that? That feeling, where you have that little tingling sensation, the burning sensation, they get into neuropathy, peripheral neuropathy in their fingers and in their toes, and it's due to that. So I don't recommend people taking more than a 20 milligram or 10 milligram B6. Because again, it's a lot of B6 you get, and if you eat plenty of meat, you'll be fine in B6. I'm not worried about that. B7. Biotin functions as a coenzyme for carboxylase enzymes involved in fatty acid synthesis, gluconeogenesis, and branched chain amino acid metabolism. Hair follicles require continuous synthesis of membrane lipids as new cells divide. Biotin supports this process by activating acetyl coenzyme A carboxylase, the rate-limiting enzyme for fatty acid synthesis. A true biotin deficiency is uncommon, but can cause brittle hair, dermatitis, and nail fragility because keratin-producing tissues are sensitive to impaired lipid metabolism. Essentially, if you eat plenty of meat and you eat plenty of eggs, you should be fine, right, with B7. I'm not worried about B7. B7 is interesting because it plays a bigger role with, again, your metabolism. It's really helpful for diabetics. And I think if a person is having blood sugar issues, then inadvertently or indirectly their B7 may be low because it's compensating for that energy production. I mean, I do like biotin because it helps with hair, skin, and nails, but underneath that engine, right, of looking beautiful, right, it helps you with your metabolism, right? And I think people often ignore that completely, and it's like, no, I think it's like the cooler part of B7. Folate, this is an important one. Very important because some people might have this certain mutation. So folate, vitamin B9. Folate carries a 1-carbon unit required for purine synthesis, thymidine synthesis, DNA replication, and RNA production. Essentially, it helps you with your DNA. Hair follicles continuously undergo mitosis, making folate indispensable for generating new follicular cells. Deficiency slows DNA synthesis, limiting production of healthy hair matrix cells. A big issue with some people in regards to hair is they probably have methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase enzyme gene mutation. So what this means is when you use a synthetic form called folic acid, it's the main supplement everywhere, it sucks. It's fortified in all the foods, the flours, it sucks. Your body just doesn't convert it well, like a regular, dihydrofolate found in natural food like avocados. So the thing is, if you use a methylfolate, you can bypass the conversion, so it can be used easily by the body. Regardless of part conversion, folic acid is not naturally found in nature, it's synthetically created. Whether you use it, whether you supplement it, or it's in fortified foods you consume, eventually you hit a bottleneck at 400 micrograms, like a long-landed DMD. What makes it more even ironic, right, is that the RDA for folic acid is 800 micrograms. At half of the RDA, the body is already bottlenecked and using and converting folic acid. This means there is not sufficient amounts of active folate, while much of the unmetabolized folic acid, UMFAs they're called, is still waiting to be converted into dihydrofolate reductase and into the active 5-methylfolate. So, depending on your MTHFR mutation, some people call it the motherfucker gene. Sounds funny. Some people, if they have a COMT gene mutation, can also be affected, which is the catechol O-methyltransferase enzyme. Some people have it fast, some people have it slow, it depends. But regardless, either methylfolate or if you're hyper after taking methylfolate, you might do better. You might have taken too much methylfolate, and you're overmethylated. So if that's you, right, you can switch to a calcium folinate, in which you feel more calmer and you don't have that sort of anxiety or agitation from having overmethylation. Just because I've noticed it's an issue in some people, right? Because you'd have to do like genetic testing for COMT and the motherfucker gene. So if you notice that, right, people say, oh my god, methylfolate's amazing, you better take it. It is, and it works too well, right, depending on the mutation you have, right, or if you don't have it. And you want to be a little more calmer, a little more chill, then take a calcium folinate / folinic acid. And that is not folic acid, it's folinic, just to have that difference. So again, right, it's just in accordance to DNA, it's got to replicate, it's got to divide. I've had a lot of success with female clients taking a calcium folinate and their hair grows out thicker and beautiful and amazing. And they stop losing the clumps. And that's because they've done everything, right? Like, I don't know what more to say. Like, for some people, this solving the B9 issue was just the thing that helped them. For other people, zinc, it depends on you, right? I don't know you. And I hope you figure it out from this article, this guide. So B12 works closely with folate, it regenerates tetrahydrofolate while supporting DNA synthesis, methylation, red blood cell production, and neurological health. Without B12 rapidly dividing follicular cells cannot replicate efficiently. B12 deficiency also reduces healthy red blood cell production, decreasing oxygen delivery to follicles. And again, this is going to be more of a vegan vegetarian problem to plant-based people. People go raw vegan and they go full retard. No offense. They don't take any supplements, knowing they're going to be critically deficient in things. The people that are very mindful and they're smart about it and they do it for spiritual reasons, they will supplement what they're missing, which is important, right? B12 is found in animal-based foods. Low B12 is an issue. I've only ever seen in plant-based people. There are certain exceptions to people that have gastritis, H. pylori, or poor stomach acid. In that case, they have issue with their intrinsic factor in absorbing B12. Minerals. Important. And again, I had to roll my eyes. When it comes to minerals and B12 and B9, I'm looking at plant-based people, or people that went, vegan, vegetarian, or some people, they unknowingly do a plant-based diet and they just cut out meat completely without ever considering that they had to give a label. That would be the label, right? That's just the way some people do, right? But the point is, right? If not, right? Eat fish, right? Chicken's not rich in zinc, particularly. But you could do like a chicken thighs, which are higher in zinc. But again, right? We're talking about iron, and anemia is it's a really big issue now. So please eat beef, bison, lamb, red meat, because it's going to be the richest in giving you bioavailable, usable heme iron. So iron delivers oxygen and supports DNA synthesis. Iron is required for hemoglobin, myoglobin, and cytochromes, and ribonucleotide reductase. Hair follicles consume tremendous amounts of oxygen, so deficiency will reduce oxygen transport while impairing ribonucleotide reductase. This enzyme is responsible for producing deoxyribonucleotides needed for DNA replication. Without DNA replication, follicular matrix cells cannot divide rapidly enough to sustain healthy hair growth. This is why a person with anemia may notice their hair is becoming thinner and not as full as it should have been. Again, eat more beef, bison, or lamb. It is the perfect food with the best nutrient profile to help people with their hair. If you want to learn more about mysterious anemia caused by nickel toxicity, click here. Because I found people that consume a lot of nickel-rich foods tend to have anemia because it competes against, iron. And people that tend to eat more plant-based have more nickel and they don't really have enough iron, and so that's where I tend to see the issue. Although I could put a little excerpt there, people who eat a lot of chocolate despite eating a lot of meat can have that issue too. Zinc for the master mineral for hair growth. I love zinc. I'm a zinc man. So zinc participates in over 300 enzymatic reactions, right? Thousands of zinc finger transcription factors, which is like what opens things up and expresses them. Within hair follicles, zinc supports DNA replication, RNA transcription, and protein synthesis, keratinocyte proliferation, stem cell signaling, wound repair, and antioxidant defense like copper, zinc, and can't forget manganese, superoxide dismutase. Zinc deficiency slows down everything when it comes to hair production because follicles cannot efficiently synthesize proteins or divide cells. In my opinion, zinc is the most important mineral when it comes to not only hair, but also the body as a whole. Let me drink of water. I've been talking too much. That's good. Okay, so remember when I talked about cysteine and getting sick and, how in some cases, if you're low in nutrients, it'll provide it to the most important parts of the body to function before you can have beautiful hair. So what I'm saying there, right, is your body needs your immune system to function well, right? Non-negotiable, you need zinc for that. Phase 1, Phase 2 liver detox. Essential, you do need that, by a lot. Liver hormone processing, right? Especially thyroid hormone, and testosterone, and estrogen, and progesterone, right? You need that. Improving fertility, important, right? Men, for your spermatogenesis, as an antioxidant to protect your sperm, your sex drive, so on, right? Antioxidant work, right? Because it works as a Lewis base to protect things. Very important. You're also going to need it for an aromatase inhibitor, so you don't turn your testosterone into more estrogen, right? There's men getting TRT and they don't fix the zinc thing, and they're getting bigger tits. As a man getting TRT, kind of funny. If you have a good doctor, he'll tell you to, take some more zinc, eat more meat, eat more beef, so your zinc can work as an aromatase inhibitor, so you get more of that testosterone going around. Women, if you have cancer, if you have a good doctor, they'll tell you increase more zinc, so you could prevent excess estrogen from fueling cancer, right? So it's really important in that regard, right? So if I want to make, right, is all these things are very important. They all go before hair, right? Hair is a luxury, realistically, right? So once you have enough zinc in your body, you can then have the luxury of beautiful, amazing, flowing hair, right? It's just a reality, right? Your body picks up those important things first, and, your hair is on a chopping block first, right? Because it's not as important, right? And people that, which one was this one? What's this, the zinc chloride one? Essentially, they got more zinc chloride and their hair improved. And that's because, like, in my opinion, right? When I look at zinc chloride, it's like the shittiest of the zincs. I'm a zinc picolinate kind of guy because it's the most bioavailable and the most usable, right? Iodine. So this is going to be more for people that have issues with their thyroid, because thyroid sets metabolism. Iodine regulates the metabolic pace of hair growth. Iodine is required to produce the thyroid hormones T4 and T3. These hormones regulate basal metabolic rate and influence nearly every cell in the body, including your hair follicles. Adequate thyroid hormone signaling promotes mitochondrial activity, protein synthesis, and progression through the hair growth cycle. Insufficient iodine can contribute to hypothyroidism, slowing follicular metabolism, and leading to diffusing, thinning, dry hair, and increased shedding. So some women that have issues with their thyroid, right? They may need. Well, I mean, so let me word it carefully, right? Some people will hear what I'm going to say and they'll take a shit ton of seaweed, or they'll do a lugal solution and overdo it and feel terrible. For more people, right? So often the simplest solution is to just use a little bit of iodized salt, right? Just a little bit of iodized salt with your meals, and then those improvements. And it's not that much more iodine, right? You don't need a megadose iodine, right? There's people that believe in doing that, and I've talked to a lot of people, they never feel better, they feel like complete shit, and it's... I honestly don't know many people that do benefit from doing that, right? It's just, yeah, I don't believe in that methodology, because it doesn't work in reality, because people eventually bail on it, because they don't feel good, right? It's fine to detox, but I don't know, I don't think people have enough bromine, or fluorine, or chlorine, or, like bromide from the bread, right? Like stuck in their thyroid, and they're feeling complete shit the whole time. I don't know about that. All I know is when people do a little bit of iodized salt, they tend to feel a lot better, right? They're correcting a small deficiency, right, in iodine. But, eat more fish, good fish, small fish. Don't eat too much sushi, you'll be a Mad Hatter and get mercury toxicity, which some people have gotten, which is, I find kind of weird, right? Because I don't, well, to be fair, sushi can vary, right? It depends on what cut of fish you got, right? Whether it was like a tuna or, I don't know, right? I know sushi varies on the fishes, but point being, right, is focus on low toxic fishes, small fishes. That way you don't really get affected by the heavy metal toxicity from mercury. So iodine supplementation doesn't improve the function of your thyroid. It may be an issue with low sodium as required by sodium iodide symporter for transportation. That's why I recommend the iodized salt. It's a 2-in-1. It could be competition with other halogens like chlorine if you're in the pool, right? Fluorine, I guess certain medications and bad toothpaste, and bromine, which I believe is like a dough conditioner if you eat a lot of bread. I've heard about bromine being used in things that are flame retardant. So perhaps there's exposure from clothing or bedding or something, right? I'm not too well versed on that. Apparently, some of that furniture, right, like leather furniture, like the finishing on it, it uses some bromine or something. So there could be exposure there too. So that could replace your iodine and why you feel like shit, right? If extra sodium and iodine doesn't help with hypothyroidism, then it may be an issue with low selenium or a liver issue when it comes to processing thyroid hormone. So, if you do this and that wasn't what helped you, right? Not specifically in hair growth, right? That's just a little bonus to it. hypothyroidism. But if you feel better overall, right, then that means you were still low, right? But if you do all that and you don't feel any different, or your thyroid isn't impacted at all, then it could be selenium as the next one that's deficient. Selenium protects hair follicles from oxidative stress, incorporated into selenoproteins such as glutathione peroxidase, thyroredoxin reductase, and iodothyronine deiodinase. These enzymes neutralize hydrogen peroxide and lipid hydroperoxides before they damage follicular cells. Selenium also supports thyroid hormone activation indirectly, influencing hair growth by maintaining normal metabolic signaling. If you have hyperthyroidism, it may more than likely be a selenium or sodium deficiency. Both selenium deficiency and excess selenium toxicity, selenosis, may contribute to hair loss, making appropriate intake essential, right? I do not recommend taking more than 300 mcgs of selenium. You can get a good amount of selenium from eating red meat. There have been very few cases of people getting toxicity from eating like a bowl of Brazil nuts. But again, that's rare. I don't know people that snack on that much nuts, but it does happen apparently. But it's rare, right? Just as a side note, don't eat a bowl of Brazil nuts. Just eat a few. You'll be fine. Magnesium, very important. I wish I could better convey to people everything that magnesium does. I mean, I'm mostly focused on it for like magnesium, calming down, sleep, parasympathetic nervous system activation, and so on. But it does a lot of enzymes in the body that are responsible. Zinc and magnesium, they're cofactors for a bunch of things in the body. Very important. And people are often deficient in magnesium due to alcohol, high sugar carb consumption, drugs, whether illicit or medical. It does deplete magnesium. So it stabilizes ATP, supports protein synthesis. Over 600 enzymes depend on magnesium, probably even more, right? We're saying 1,000 or 2,000. Nearly every ATP molecule in cells exists as Mg magnesium ATP, making magnesium indispensable for energy production. It supports ribosomal function, which is important for, amino acids and proteins and peptides. Ribosomes, they kind of like little typewriters. They put in the recipe for your proteins. Kind of cool like that. RNA synthesis, DNA repair, and protein translation. Hair follicles, with their intense metabolic demands, rely heavily on magnesium to fuel keratin synthesis and cell proliferation. From client experience, I often see they're low magnesium, as many food sources are becoming scarce in nutritional magnesium due to terrible farming practices, and it's just not as plentiful as it was in the soil. The soil is becoming fallow, so there's less nutrients, of course. I recommend using a topical magnesium lotion as it better absorbs than from taking a pill. When there's blood testing and hair testing, magnesium as a lotion, from my experience, always will outrank taking a magnesium pill. So when ending, too long, didn't read. Because some people read at a third grade level or some shit, right? I remember reading like 30% of people in college read at like a first grade level. And I'm like, that's crazy. What's that saying? Never leave a kid behind. No child left behind, right? And then things just got worse because, everything became easy to do. Things aren't hard anymore. Which is why everything's hard now. I've never believed in a low barrier to entry because then, things become flooded and things get worse. But I digress, if you know me. Okay, so an ending, to make a long story short, right? Just eat more red meat like beef, bison, and lamb for quality nutrition. You get your amino acids, you get a lot of your B vitamins, you get a lot of your important minerals, iron, zinc, selenium, required for supporting hair growth. You supplement with magnesium lotion on your skin, at least 15 minutes of sunlight, as much of your body as possible for vitamin D and the entire sunlight spectrum, red light, blue light, green light. A bit of iodized salt, methylfolate or folinic acid, depending on you, right? I never recommend folic acid, just, find one that works best with you, right? You don't need a test, just try methylfolate, you feel good and you're okay, good. If you feel hyper energized, go with a calcium folinate. B1, helpful for energy. Vitamin C helps you really maximize, your glycine and collagen. And eat enough food, right? Don't undereat. If you undereat, you're not getting enough nutrients. You're not getting enough. I'm not a calorie guy, but you're not getting enough calories, right? Lack of energy for your body's, usual demands. Then yeah, there could be an issue there. So avoid seed oils, replace them with healthy fats, so you could reduce as much lipid peroxidation as possible to reduce inflammation, and you have more glutathione from that. Sleep well, again, 8 hours of sleep, get sufficient darkness before bed to activate melatonin so you fall asleep, right? Drink enough water, because again, you gotta go through hydrolysis and have your process run with water. Important. And reduce stress. Some people eat away at stress, right? And stress depletes glycine and other nutrients and magnesium and B1 and some B vitamins, right? That's just the reality, right? Stress is a motherfucker. And if you're stressed, don't overeat carbs or don't overeat sugar or don't overeat or overdrink alcohol, right? Just, chill, right? So while this does not work effectively for everyone, some people have autoimmune alopecia or certain, issues, diseases, uh, results will take time. It will close the gap in potential nutritional deficiencies for the average person that they did not consider before reading this guide. I do not recommend plant-based diets as a critical nutrient components that are essential that we get from red meat, right? Enjoy your steaks, briskets, and ground beef. Yada yada yada. If you want supplements, there's full script. Again, I recommend consult with me so you get what you need and you're not taking something or wasting money, right? People often waste a lot of money on supplements. If you're Brian Johnson, right, you're wasting a lot of money on supplements, and the people you hired are, with all due respect, retarded. Because now the guy has autoimmune gastritis, right? I don't know if the plant-based thing's working. I don't know if all these supplements are working. I don't know if the only thing I can say he's doing right is his sleep. His sleep is doing right. No alcohol, he's doing that right. He's really worried about sex. That's probably hurting him in weird ways. He blood dopes from his son or something. He's doing a lot of things that are, expert approved. There's studies on, right? I don't know, rat studies or some shit. Point being, I look at a guy like Brian Johnson, right? This guy who's almost worth $1 billion, spending millions of dollars of his money on his own health to, beat death and live as long as possible, right? He's got a very young biological age, right? Blah, blah, all this fucking marketing, right? All this bullshit. I don't know many 18-year-olds with autoimmune gastritis, right? So much for having a young chronotype, chrono age, whatever you want to call it, biological age, right? I don't care, because it's a made-up number and people just, to me it's like a tarot card reading, right? Or someone reading your star sign. Cool, whatever. Doesn't really impact or change my life. I would recommend Brian Johnson to fire his team because, again, right? But again, I think it's a psyop because he's purposely pushing a plant-based diet. And he's taking all these supplements just to mimic that small power for a piece of meat, right? I'm not saying 80 pounds of meat a day, right? If you do, cool. That's nice. But if you eat at least a half a pound of beef a day, you'll notice, substantial positive differences in your health and improvements. Brian Johnson won't touch the meat, which I find kind of odd, right? But again, right, he's trying to biohack, and biohacking will at some point turn into a cyborg-like transhumanism idea to live forever, right? Because you can only biohack flesh so long. We all die at some point, right? That's just reality. So, yeah, just, take it easy, right? Do things naturally, and things will improve for you. The problem is when you're biohacking things and you do all these things, right? You can't really measure how efficient a few factors are working when you're doing 100 things at the same time, right? You can't factor in how much weight of all these things are doing to some extent, right? But I digress. So yeah, if you have thinning hair, right, and you have issues and you're feeling, you're feeling sad, right? People want to have a full set of hair, and I get it. I know guys that can't grow a beard, any beard, right? They got peach fuzz, and it's sad. I tell them, eat more meat. Lo and behold, right, their peach fuzz eventually over time turns into a full beard, right? Now, some people grow better than others, right? Some people have better nutrition than others, right? There's a lot of factors involved, right? But if you get your nutrition right, your protein right, your vitamins, your minerals right, you will grow more hair, right, men and women. Men, you'll grow a glorious beard, right? Depending on your genetics, right? But, again, right, it takes a good gear to get a good beard in. So yeah, please, like, share, subscribe, share this with your husband if he's feeling down, right? Share this with your wife if, she seems really impacted by her thinning hair, right? It doesn't have to happen this way, which is what I'm saying, right? If you're a young man or woman, right? This article is going to help you not just in your hair or your skin, but your hormones and your virility, your fertility, all that kind of stuff, right? When it teaches very basic, and it's kind of boring. But again, in a Promethean nature, I'm stealing the knowledge from the gods to give to you guys, so you can do something about it. But some of this video is free, right? So if you want to be my client, right, you just talk to me and we'll have an appointment, right? And we can figure out what to do that's best for you. Now, granted, I focus on a lot of things like type 2 diabetes, obesity, chronic fatigue, stress and sleep, toxic heavy metals, hormone balancing, acid detox, acid reflux, arthritis, leaky gut, skin and acne, heart health, fertility, oncology, mental health. I do a lot of things. I do everything, right? Because I'm bored of a lot of things because I figure things out and they're easy. So I like hard problems. So if you have a bad health problem, you don't want to give me a hard time and want me to try and figure it, yeah, just let me know and make an appointment and I want to help you, right? Because my whole point is to make the world a better place. And part of being healthy is everyone looks hotter and younger and beautiful and amazing. So my goal when doing this is the people, right? My generation and 2 generations after that, right? My goal is for the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th generation to be smarter than all of us, to be beautiful than all of us, to be more athletic than all of us, I want to say superhuman children for the future so they can solve our problems, right? And to be good stewards of the world and when they're not focusing on debilitating health problems that they grew up with as children, they can do much more in this world and enjoy a full, happy life and not even be weighed down by bad health. So please, join me in my Patreon if you're interested in my work, right? Because I tackle a lot of little things from things that are unusual, right? Like nickel. Nickel's a big one. And I just want people to close the gap in their knowledge to do more with, right? Doctors like me because I'm very interesting in the way I think. And people like me because I make connections that there are other doctors and nutritionists and specialists and dietitians and health coaches just did not know or failed to figure out, right? This is why I make my videos free, right? Because if I help more people understand things and make connections in their brain and they're growing more neurons and they're figuring stuff out, it's cool. I like it. But it's almost an hour, and my plan was to make this 30 minutes, and I talk too much because, it's easy to talk a lot on these topics. And if you know me, I'm a very quiet guy. So again, everyone, thank you. God bless y'all. Please like and share. And yeah, because you could make hair bigger, thicker, nicer, beautiful. Because really, plant-based diets are disastrous for hair. Not eating enough is disastrous for hair. Not getting any protein or very low protein is disastrous for hair. Not eating beef is disastrous for your health as a whole because it does so much with so little. And I think that's beautiful. So okay, God bless you all and take care now. Goodbye.